Think about a completely standard, generic plastic bottle of water.
Right.
You buy it from a vendor on a dusty street corner, and it costs you maybe 15 rupees.
Right. Just basic market value.
Exactly. But you take that exact same bottle, the exact same chemical composition, the same plastic, and you put it on a table in a Michelin star restaurant, and suddenly it's 50 rupees.
Or more, yeah.
Right. Or more. And then move it past the security checkpoint of an international airport, and you were staring at a 200 rupee price tag. Same plastic, same water.
The exact same contents, yes.
I mean, I watched this exact dynamic play out in a corporate boardroom last week. Not with water, obviously, but with a human being, a brilliant engineer.
Let me guess. Highly reliable.
Unbelievably reliable. He worked weekends, was constantly available to fix literally everyone's problems,
Yeah.
deeply loyal to the company. And he got entirely passed over for promotion by a guy who is, honestly, barely in the office.
Yep.
But this absent guy, he knows exactly how to make his rare, highly curated appearances feel like this massive event. And it is just infuriating to watch because the core contents of the bottle, like the intelligence, the actual work ethic, were vastly superior in the guy who got ignored.
It's infuriating to you because you are clinging to a deeply romanticized, almost childlike assumption about how the world assigns value.
Childlike. I mean, expecting hard work to be rewarded isn't childlike. It's just,
It is an ideological fantasy. You want to believe that human value is this intrinsic property, like mass or volume. You assume that if you simply possess high moral character or intense capability, the environment will naturally detect it and compensate you accordingly. But the market of human interaction does not measure intrinsic worth. It measures perceived positioning.
so you're saying.
I'm saying the engineer you're talking about priced himself at 15 rupees by sitting on the street corner of constant availability. If a person feels undervalued, ignored, or disrespected, it is not because they are inherently worthless. It is because they are sitting on the wrong metaphorical street corner.
But that goes against every single thing we are taught about being a good colleague, or a good friend, or a good partner. We're told that reliability and omnipresence are virtues.
Well, society tells you a lot of things to keep you compliant.
Wow. Okay, but you are essentially saying that if someone is disrespected, it's not because they lack worth, but because they have structurally mismanaged their own market positioning. You're treating personal respect like a completely engineered, ruthless commodity.
Because it is a commodity. And the sooner we strip away the sentimentality, the sooner we can actually dismantle the architecture of how respect is manufactured. We're dealing with psychological laws here, not moral ones.
Okay, if we're treating this like a science, where do we even start? What is the foundation of this architecture?
The foundational law, the one that governs literally everything from global economics to whether your partner texts you back, is the psychology of habituation. It's basic supply and demand. When you make yourself infinitely available, you trigger a biological mechanism in the human brain that actively filters you out.
Wait, I need to push back on this immediately. You're mapping capitalist supply and demand onto biological relationships. It doesn't hold up.
Oh, it holds up perfectly.
No, because human beings are evolutionary creatures.
Yeah.
We're wired for reciprocal altruism. I mean, in a hunter-gatherer tribe, the person who played games and made themselves scarce wasn't highly valued. They were exiled. The most reliable person, the one who was always there to hunt or guard the fire, was the most valued. We are wired to appreciate omnipresence in our allies.
You are confusing the prehistoric savanna with the modern abstraction of society.
How is it different? Our brains are the same.
Our brains are the same, but the environment is entirely different. On the savanna, constant availability meant survival, yes. But in a modern office or a modern friendship, physical survival is already guaranteed. We are no longer operating on a hierarchy of survival needs. We are operating in the attention economy.
Okay, the attention economy.
Right. And in the attention economy, the brain conserves cognitive load by ignoring what is predictable. Think about the air versus diamond paradox.
The economic theory.
Exactly. Air is absolutely essential for survival. You need it every second. Yeah, it's free, and you never think about it because it is everywhere. Though, honestly, with environmental degradation, we might be buying fresh air soon.
Fair point. Yeah.
But diamonds,
Yes.
completely non-essential. You can live your entire life without touching a diamond, yet they cost millions because they are rare. The human brain values scarcity. Think about the shirt on your back right now.
My shirt.
Yes, you only felt the fabric when you first put it on this morning. After 5 minutes, your sensory receptors stop sending signals to your brain about the fabric because the input was constant.
Oh, wow.
That is habituation. When you instantly reply to every single message, when you drop your own priorities the second someone calls, you become the shirt. The psychological friction drops to zero, and the people around you literally stop perceiving your value. You don't become reliable, you become invisible.
So the devotion actually erases you. That is incredibly dark. If I'm understanding the mechanism here, by being perfectly accommodating, I am unintentionally training the people around me to view my time as a worthless currency. I am inflating my own supply until my presence is practically hyperinflated into worthlessness.
Exactly. It's the currency hyperinflation of the self. If a central bank prints 1 trillion new bills tomorrow, the money in your wallet loses its purchasing power. When you print infinite availability, your presence loses its behavioral purchasing power. This leads to what I call the digital dustbin.
The digital dustbin, what is that?
Society operates with a brutal efficiency. If you do not fiercely, almost aggressively guard your own schedule, others will naturally assume your time has zero opportunity cost. And so they will throw their mundane tasks, their emotional venting, their boredom right into your dustbin.
Because they assume you have nothing better to do.
Because you've proven you have nothing better to do by always being available.
Okay, I see the biological reality of habituation, but, and here's my real problem with this, how do you actually apply this without becoming incredibly alienated?
What do you mean?
I mean, if I start artificially withholding my time from my family or my closest friends just to, manipulate their dopamine receptors into valuing me, I'm not a high value person. I'm just a sociopath playing games. There has to be a limit to scarcity.
The error in your logic is assuming that making yourself scarce is an artificial manipulation. If you are actually building a life of value, your scarcity shouldn't be a game. It should be a natural byproduct of your focus.
A byproduct.
Yes.
Yeah.
High-value individuals aren't sitting in an empty room ignoring text messages just to look busy. That's what teenagers do. High-value people are genuinely absorbed in their own trajectory, their work, their physical training, their intellectual pursuits. Scarcity isn't a tactic. It is the inevitable mathematical result of having a highly optimized life. You say no to a trivial favor not to manipulate the requester, but because your yes is already heavily invested in your own architecture.
Okay, that reframes it entirely. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being fundamentally hard to reach because you are moving at a different velocity.
Exactly. You are simply unavailable for the dustbin.
So holding back your physical time is the first layer. But physical time is just logistics. I want to look at the psychological layer of this because physical absence is one thing, but emotional or informational absence is another entirely. If you're physically present, but you deliberately hold back your thoughts, your plans, your internal data, does that trigger the same mechanism?
It triggers an even more powerful one. We are talking about the currency of mystery and the deliberate engineering of unpredictability.
The currency of mystery.
Think about the most powerful, influential people you've encountered. They are notoriously tight-lipped. They are listeners, not talkers. The human brain is essentially a prediction machine. It constantly seeks to map out its environment, understand the people within it, categorize them, and then move on.
Right.
When you broadcast your every intention, when you monologue about your 5-year plan, or immediately lay out all your anxieties, you hand the observer a complete topographical map of your mind.
You become a solved puzzle.
Precisely. And what do we do with puzzles once we've solved them?
We put them back in the box and put them on a shelf.
We don't look at them again. People lose interest when there is absolutely nothing left to guess about you. Maintaining a perimeter of silence prevents the brain from categorizing you as solved.
But look at the entirety of modern corporate and psychological culture right now. We are drowning in a multi-billion-dollar industry that preaches the exact opposite. Every leadership seminar, every self-help guru tells us that vulnerability is strength. We are instructed to share our failures, lead with our weaknesses, be radically transparent, because that is how you build trust and authenticity.
Yeah, and it's a disaster.
But you are proposing a model of intense, guarded silence. Doesn't this stoic, closed-off approach just breed paranoia and isolation? If I never show you my weaknesses, how can you ever genuinely connect with me?
This is where we have to ruthlessly dissect what modern culture has done to the word vulnerability. True vulnerability, like admitting a mistake when you've genuinely harmed someone, or sharing a deep fear with a life partner of a decade, that is indeed a bonding mechanism. But that is not what society is currently practicing.
What are they practicing then?
Society is practicing performative hemorrhage.
Performative hemorrhage. Okay, that's Quite a phrase.
It's accurate. People are confusing transparency with intellectual incontinence. They believe that broadcasting their unexecuted plans, their daily insecurities, and their raw, unprocessed emotional trauma to colleagues or casual acquaintances makes them authentic. In reality, they're doing two catastrophic things.
Which are?
First, they are utterly destroying the dopamine loop of unpredictable reward. Robert Sapolsky, the neuroendocrinologist, studied dopamine extensively. He found it doesn't peak when we get a reward. It peaks when the reward is at a 50% uncertainty.
So the anticipation is the peak.
Yes, mystery creates a magnetic neurological pull. When you overshare, when you tell everyone exactly what you're doing and feeling, that uncertainty drops to zero.
Yeah.
And the magnetic pull dies with it.
And the second catastrophic thing.
You are distributing live ammunition to people who have not earned the clearance to hold it. When you lead with your weaknesses under the guise of being authentic, you are not building trust. You are giving opportunistic people the exact coordinates of your structural flaws.
But isn't that a very cynical way to view human connection? Assuming everyone is out to sabotage you?
It's not paranoia, it's basic structural engineering.
Yeah.
There is a profound difference between showing someone a scar and showing them an open, bleeding wound.
A scar versus a wound.
Yes. A scar proves you survived something. It's healed, it commands respect, and shows depth of character. An open wound just makes people recoil because they subconsciously think you're going to bleed out on their carpet and they'll have to clean it up. Modern authenticity tells people to walk around with open wounds. High-value architecture dictates that you process your wounds in silence, and perhaps much later, you allow a select few to see the scar.
That distinction between the scar and the wound completely dismantles the current oversharing trend. It actually perfectly explains why we intuitively lose respect for leaders who constantly over-explain their anxieties. But let me challenge the execution of this silence.
Go ahead.
If I keep my mouth shut, if I hold my plans close to my chest and maintain this magnetic unpredictability, eventually, people are going to peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And if there is no actual substance behind that silence, the mystery wasn't a powerful strategy. It was just a stalling tactic, a sneak screen for a lack of capability. I mean, what is the point of hiding your plans if those plans aren't actually leading to an improved version of yourself?
I agree completely. Which is why silent without relentless internal evolution is just a prelude to exposure. You cannot maintain values simply by hiding in the dark. This requires a transition from the defense of your boundaries to the active, brutal upgrading of your internal operating system.
So we're moving from how people perceive us to the actual hardware.
Yes, and this brings us to the concept of structural entropy and the relentless obsolescence of the self.
Entropy. Like the idea from thermodynamics that closed systems inevitably degrade into chaos unless energy is actively applied.
Exactly. Most people view their personal development as a plateau. They get the degree, they secure the job, they find the partner, and they assume they've reached a static state of value. They think, I've made it, I can stop now.
Right, the happily ever after model.
But there are no static states in dynamic environments. Society does not pause. If you are the exact same person you were 5 years ago, relying on the same skill set, holding the same worldview, operating with the same physical capacity, you are not standing still. You are actively degrading because the environment around you is accelerating.
Like an app update.
Exactly like an app update. No one wants to use a clunky keypad phone today, nor would anyone willingly choose a 2G network when 5G is available. Why? Because speed and efficiency are demanded by the environment.
We see this in software engineering all the time. It's literally called technical debt. If you build a system and then refuse to update the code, because, it works fine right now, eventually the operating systems around it update, the security protocols change, and your legacy code just crashes under the weight of the new environment. You're saying human beings carry massive amounts of psychological and intellectual technical debt.
We do. And society rightfully devalues us for it. Updates must happen on 3 fronts constantly. Mentally, physically, and ethically. You must be reading, learning new tech, taking care of your biological hardware. Think of the water metaphor.
The stagnant pond versus the river.
Yes, the stagnant pond grows moss, it becomes toxic. The flowing river stays clean because of the kinetic energy of movement. You must choose not to be the pond. Think about the Red Queen hypothesis in evolutionary biology.
From Lewis Carroll, right. Alice in Wonderland.
Through the looking glass, yes. The Red Queen tells Alice it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. This is exactly how evolution works. Predators evolve faster legs, so prey must evolve better camouflage, which means predators must evolve better eyesight.
Yeah.
It's a relentless, brutal arms race. If you stop running, you don't just pause, you are consumed.
Okay, I understand the biology and I understand the physics, but practically speaking, this sounds like a recipe for a global mental health crisis
Right.
because you are describing the ultimate hedonic treadmill. We have to constantly read more, learn new tech, optimize our bodies, and refine our emotional intelligence just to not be consumed by society. Are we just software? This relentless push for 5G level self-improvement is exactly why half the workforce is utterly burnt out. Is there no point where a human being is allowed to just be good enough? Are we not allowed to rest?
You are absolutely allowed to rest. You can choose to step off the treadmill right now.
Well, that's a relief.
But listen to the caveat. You can choose to let your skills atrophy, you can let your physical hardware decline, and you can coast on outdated 2G knowledge. You have every right to make that choice. But here is the uncompromising reality. You cannot make that choice and then demand that the market continues to value you at a premium rate.
Oh. So I want the comfort of stagnation, but the compensation of evolution.
Precisely. The universe does not care about your burnout. The market of human interaction does not care about your exhaustion. If you refuse to update your technical fluency in a rapidly shifting industry, your employer will replace you with someone who did. If you refuse to upgrade your communication and emotional intelligence, your partner will outgrow the dynamic and the relationship will fracture.
That is incredibly cold.
It is gravity. You cannot demand that reality lower its standards to accommodate your fatigue. The maintenance of high value requires immense, continuous kinetic energy. Stagnation is social death.
That is a harsh mirror to hold up.
Yeah.
If you are listening right now, you really have to audit your own operating system. Look at your own technical debt. Are you walking into your workplace or your marriage demanding a premium level of respect while running on an intellectual OS that hasn't been patched since 2019?
Most people are, and they wonder why they aren't respected.
But let's look at what happens when that system comes under attack. Because you can upgrade your mind, you can learn 3 languages, and you can be in peak physical condition. But if your system crashes the moment someone applies external emotional pressure, your value drops to 0 instantly.
Because high cognitive capacity is completely useless without a fortified regulatory system. This is the neurobiology of restraint. How you react to provocation is the ultimate litmus test of your perceived value. Making your emotions cheap destroys your architecture. Society views those who cannot control their anger or their tears as fundamentally immature.
Okay, let's ground this in a very specific, aggressive scenario.
Let's do it.
You are in a high-stakes meeting, or perhaps a really tense family negotiation. Someone across the table looks at you and throws a highly specific, deeply personal, and entirely unwarranted insult your way.
Happens all the time.
Right. And the natural physiological response is immediate. The heart rate spikes, the face flushes, and the instinct is to immediately fire back a retort to defend your ego.
And the moment you fire back, you have lost.
Even if I have a brilliant comeback.
Especially if you scramble for a comeback. You have just experienced an amygdala hijack. The attacker threw a cognitive payload at you, designed specifically to bypass your prefrontal cortex, your logical brain, and trigger your sympathetic nervous system. They wanted to see if they could control your physiology.
Like pressing a button.
Exactly. If you raise your voice, if you scramble to defend yourself, you have effectively reached into your own chest, pulled out the remote control to your nervous system, and handed it across the table to them. You have proven that they have the power to turn you into a reactive puppet. High-value people respond, but they do not react.
But wait, if I just sit there and take it, if I don't defend myself, aren't I signaling weakness? Psychologically speaking, the somatization of anger, feeling extreme anger and swallowing it down, leads to massive physiological stress, anxiety, and resentment. Are you advocating for emotional suppression? Because clinically, bottling up your anger is a disaster for human health. Isn't righteous anger justified when you are attacked?
We must draw a very sharp line between suppression and cognitive reframing.
Okay, what's the difference?
Suppression is when you are burning alive with rage on the inside, panicking, and frantically trying to staple a calm expression onto your face. That is indeed unhealthy, and more importantly, people can see right through it. They see the clenched jaw, the forced smile, the shaking hands. It still signals that you are compromised.
Right.
Cognitive reframing, which is the hallmark of true mastery, is entirely different. It is utilizing your prefrontal cortex to analyze the insult in real time and genuinely realizing that it has no kinetic power over you.
How does that actually work in the moment, though, when the blood is rushing to your ears?
Think of it like asymmetrical warfare, or the principles of Aikido. In Aikido, you do not meet force with opposing force. You absorb the attacker's kinetic energy and let them overbalance themselves. When someone insults you, they expect a reciprocal impact. They need you to react to validate their strike. If you meet that insult with absolute unbothered silence, and I don't mean a nervous silence, but a heavy, dead silence, you deny them the impact.
You essentially let them throw a punch into a vacuum.
Yes. And throwing a punch into a vacuum is exhausting and deeply destabilizing. The heavy weight of silence hangs in the air. The attacker suddenly realizes that their emotional state is entirely unreciprocated. They look unhinged, emotional, and out of control, while you appear utterly untouchable. Silence isn't a defensive shield. In the face of provocation, it is a terrifying, heavy weapon. It forces the aggressor to sit in the awkward, reverberating echo of their own lack of control.
I love the mechanics of that. You aren't suppressing the fire, you are suffocating the attacker's oxygen. But let's escalate this. Let's say you master this. You are stoic. You let the insults fall into the vacuum, but the person realizes you aren't going to fight back, so they just keep doing it. Week after week, the manager undermines you, or the friend makes passive-aggressive remarks. Stoicism alone cannot solve a persistent structural breach. At a certain point, silence just looks like compliance.
Which is why mastering your internal emotional response is only the internal shock absorber. It is completely insufficient without an external, ironclad perimeter defense to prevent the insults from happening in the first place.
And this brings us to boundaries.
Yes, the absolute bedrock of human value. The architecture of ironclad boundaries. And the foundational premise here is one that most people categorically refuse to accept.
Which is?
You are treated exactly the way you allow yourself to be treated.
And here's where I'm going to get furious on behalf of the listener.
I expect nothing less.
Because that sounds exactly like blatant systemic victim blaming. If a woman is dealing with a toxic, manipulative boss who constantly chips away at her confidence, or someone is in a relationship with a narcissist who randomly erupts and verbally abuses them out of nowhere, you are telling them that the disrespect they are suffering is their own fault. How can you possibly justify blaming the person receiving the abuse instead of the predator administering it?
By understanding the clear difference between the initiation of malice and the establishment of a pattern, let me draw a hard line here.
Yeah.
The first time someone disrespects you, the first time a boss makes a toxic comment or a partner crosses a line, it is entirely their fault. It is a reflection of their poor character, their lack of regulation, or their predatory nature. You cannot control the initial strike.
Okay.
But the second time they do it,
Yeah.
the third, the fifth, that is on you.
Because I didn't stop it.
Because you signaled that the cost of violating your perimeter was zero. The world operates through operant conditioning. People, especially manipulative or predatory people, are constantly running subtle probes against the fences of everyone they meet. They throw out a minor insult, a slight boundary overstep, just to test the voltage of the fence.
And what do most people do? Because of social conditioning, because we are trained to be agreeable and to keep the peace, we smile through the insults, we laugh nervously, we try to appease them, we compromise our self-respect, hoping it was just a one-off.
Exactly. And when you do that, when you smile through disrespect, you send a massive behavioral signal to the predator. This fence is not electrified. You can step over it whenever you want, and there will be no consequences. The blame for the malice lies with the attacker, but the responsibility for halting it lies entirely with you. You cannot control the existence of predators in the world, but you absolutely control whether you lay out a red carpet for them.
So what does an electrified fence actually look like? Because a boundary without a consequence isn't a boundary, it's just a suggestion.
An electrified fence means immediate, disproportionate consequences for a breach. It means you set standards that dictate who is allowed in and exactly how they are required to behave. The moment a colleague speaks to you disrespectfully, you stop the conversation dead. You do not laugh, you do not soften your tone, you look at them and state clearly that the tone is unacceptable. And if it continues, the interaction ends immediately. And this is the crucial part that most people fail at, you must actually be willing to walk away. If you threaten a consequence and fail to execute it, you haven't just left the fence unpowered, you have actively invited them to tear it down.
I want you, listening right now, to run a mental scan of your life. Identify the people in your life who have bypassed your boundaries. The family member who constantly belittles your choices. The client who called you at 9 p.m. on a Sunday and demands immediate revisions. The friend who only reaches out when they need to dump their emotional baggage into your digital dustbin. Look closely at those dynamics. Did they bring battering rams and destroy your boundaries? Or did you carefully leave the gate wide open because you were terrified that if you installed a lock, they might not come visit you anymore?
That is the terror that prevents people from building high-value architecture. They are terrified that if they enforce their scarcity, if they stop oversharing, if they stop reacting to drama, and if they electrify their boundaries, they will end up alone. They would rather accept the 15 rupee valuation on the street corner because, at least on the street corner, there is foot traffic.
But the foot traffic doesn't respect the water. It just consumes it mindlessly.
Precisely. Upgrading your value to the premium level guarantees a filtering process. When you enforce these laws, you will inevitably lose people. The opportunists, the energy vampires, and the people who relied on your lack of boundaries will fall away. But that is not a loss. That is an architectural clearing. It is making space for those who can afford the 200 rupee valuation.
This has been a profoundly intense deconstruction. I mean, we started by dismantling the comforting illusion that you are inherently owed respect simply by virtue of existing. And what we have built in its place is a ruthlessly pragmatic structural reality. We've taken this entire deep dive to really look at the mechanics of human interaction.
And the logical conclusion is that your value is not a magical aura you are born with. It's a fortress of your own design. It is a daily active practice. It requires making your time scarce so you don't hyperinflate. It is the discipline to protect your internal mysteries and let your actions speak from the silence. It is the exhausting but necessary commitment to constantly overwrite your own technical debt, upgrading your mind and body so you don't become obsolete. It is holding the remote control to your emotions to absorb an attack without handing over your power. And it is the uncompromising, aggressive willingness to electrify your perimeter.
It all comes down to leverage and self-enforcement. The world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting your own internal standards back at you. If you sit back and hope that people will spontaneously realize how kind, smart, and valuable you are, you will be waiting forever. You have to force the market to recognize your valuation through your behavior. The world will not give you a penny's worth of respect if you do not value yourself first.
There is no external savior coming to reprice your life. You are the architect, the builder, and the sole security detail of your own worth.
Which leaves us with the ultimate actionable verdict. You can stand in front of your bathroom mirror tomorrow morning, look yourself in the eye, and recite all the positive affirmations you want. You can boldly claim your specialness. You can declare, I am a high-value person who commands respect. But words without structural enforcement are just localized air pressure. That statement requires action to back it up.
Absolutely.
So I leave you with this final provocative thought. If you look in the mirror today at 7 a.m. and declare, I am special, but at 8 a.m. tomorrow you instantly, fearfully reply to a demanding, disrespectful text from someone who has repeatedly crossed your boundaries. Was your declaration in the mirror a truth you were willing to fight for? Or was it just a comforting lie you told yourself to endure another day on the street corner?